Hi, welcome to the first episode of Bookies. I'm Barrett. Today we're going to talk about Kazuo Ishiguro's novel, Klara and the Sun. I once read that Dan Brown wrote the entirety of the Da Vinci Code in 1 hour while drunk on a white wine spritzer bender. If you've read it, you know that's probably true. What we're going to talk about today, though, is something entirely different. Something that causes you to think, and that's Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. My recommendation to you is simply that you should read it. It's a really good book. I give it about a 4.2 out of 5. And it's not so much about the story itself, it's simply because of the themes that the story explores. And I think they're themes that are universal to all of us. So I'll try to give you a spoiler-free synopsis of the book first before we get into the themes of the book, which will include some spoilers. So I'll clue you in when that happens. So this novel is written in the first-person perspective of Klara, artificial intelligence entity, an artificial friend. Klara is unique amongst other artificial friends in that she seems to exhibit more keen powers of observation than the other artificial friends. And she also experiences some things that are uniquely human. Emotion, a fear that she won't be purchased or loved, or that she'll be purchased and then abandoned by the person who was supposed to be her intended friend. We note immediately in this book that when Klara is in the shop awaiting to be purchased, she has unique observational skills beyond those of other artificial friends. One day in the store window, she's looking out the store window and she sees that there's a homeless man and his dog completely unconscious. And they remain that way for almost the entirety of the day. And she also knows that there's joggers and others passersby that simply don't give any aid to this man or check to see if he's okay. Klara concludes that he's dead. But then she notices that the sun's rays land on the homeless man and his dog, and he revives. It's essentially a miraculous healing or even a resurrection. But Klara notices this, and ultimately she's going to conclude that the sun is a deity, or Klara herself is solar powered. So naturally, she comes to the conclusion that the sun itself is a deity that has healing power. Klara ultimately is purchased by Chrissy. Chrissy is the mom of another character by the name of Josie. We find out rather quickly that Josie is ill, and Chrissy is, at least initially, purchasing Klara to basically accompany Josie and give her friendship. Now, this novel pivots around the relationship between Josie, her mother, and Klara. By my count, there are essentially 7 characters that I think you should know about because they kind of frame the story as you read it. We'll go through the characters one by one, and you'll get a good sense for the story itself by doing so. Chrissy, already mentioned, Chrissy is the mother of Josie, and Chrissy essentially is motivated by regret for decisions that she made for her child. More on that later. Paul, Josie's husband. Paul lost his job because of artificial intelligence. He was an engineer and he was substituted with artificial intelligence. He's separated from Chrissy. They no longer live together. It's unclear whether they're even still married, but the point is they are separated. Rick is the neighbor boy to Josie. Rick and Josie are friends, and it's quite clear that they have some kind of plan to essentially be lifelong partners, even though we never get the details of that plan. Josie is, aside from Klara, the main character. Josie is the intended friend for Klara. I would describe Josie as your typical preteen girl. There's nothing profound about Josie. She's just kind of normal. But what makes her unique in this situation is that she is ill. She's ill as a result of some choices that her mother, Chrissy, made. Helen is Rick, the next door neighbor boy's mom. Now, she also made choices with regard to her child, and she likewise feels regret for making those choices. Lastly, I'll talk about the sun. The sun is personified as a remote deity. The sun may require acts of faith or or sacrifice before it will heal. At least in the mind of Klara, that is the case. That is what it takes to make the sun act on your behalf. And then Klara herself, she's an artificial intelligence who will, of course, advance in understanding over time, because that's what AI does, even though, interestingly, her body will not grow. So think for a minute, if you bought such an artificial friend for somebody that was 4 years old, and let's say the quote-unquote age of the artificial friend was 8 years old, so a 4-year difference. Eventually, that child is going to grow up and become an adult. The artificial intelligence is going to be essentially an 8-year-old body. Kind of weird when you think about it. Klara is an artificial intelligence that feels doubt, fear, sadness, empathy, loss. These are all human qualities. But she lacks other human qualities. And frankly, they're the negative ones. Anger, envy, jealousy. But maybe the most unique human quality that we all share is love. And this poses an interesting intellectual question. Can artificial intelligence love? Can it be programmed to exhibit some human qualities, but not all? And as a result of that, programming lacks total free will. But what about love? Love is not only emotion, it's an action, it's feeling, it's all those things. And the interesting question here is, can artificial intelligence feel love? Can it give love? Artificial intelligence is programmed. It's programmed to learn. But if it's programmed to predispose it to be an artificial friend for an individual, to exhibit things that look like love but may not be, is it really love? And I think ultimately it comes down to free will. There's an artificial intelligence that is programmed to make certain conclusions and make certain actions and think in certain ways and process in certain ways, have complete and total free will. Probably not. So, those are the main characters. I think the reason you should read this book is the broader themes. So we have a very, Ishiguro writes very narrowly with regard to the number of characters and place settings in the book, but the broader themes are much bigger, and it causes you to think, and that's why you should read it. So one could argue that this book is really about addressing the role of AI in society, but I think that misses the point. Ishiguro shows some muscle here by addressing larger, more significant issues. Parenthood. Let's start with parenthood. Lots of you are parents out there. I myself am a parent of 7. As a parent, you make choices, right? You make choices on behalf of your kids. That's just part of being a parent, right? Did you ever have regret about making a choice on behalf of your child? If you do, let's say you made a choice that you thought was well-intended for your child, but it ended up going horribly wrong and actually proved to be a negative consequence to your child. How do you make up for that kind of thing? That's a question that's explored. We have 3 characters, Paul, Chrissy, and the next door neighbor, Rick's mom, Helen, who have all made choices, either for good or for ill, for their children. Each of them feels regret in some way for the choices they have made. And this is something that you should think about, all right? Ultimately, we may come to a point in our society very soon where you have the ability to genetically modify an infant or a fetus in the womb. There's a lot of moral questions that are posed by that we should consider. So, Ishiguro also addresses the dichotomy between faith and reason. We all struggle with that, right? Let's say that you have faith in something, i.e. a deity. How does your rational mind deal with evidence either pro, for, or against that deity. Likewise, if we take it away from worship and religious expression, how does your faith or reason apply to decisions that you make? I have faith in the decision I make because the rational evidence concludes that this will be the result. These are matters that are addressed by Ishiguro quite well, particularly between the dialogue between Paul, the father of Josie, and Chrissy, her mother. So this is where the discussion, because we're going to get thematic and we're going to talk about specific instances in the book, is going to turn to some mild spoilers. So if you're one of those people that hate spoilers, now's the time probably to check out. But I'll leave you with this. Read this book. It's very readable. You will not waste your time. Spend some time thinking about these very issues: faith, reason, the role of artificial intelligence, how parenthood is impacted by artificial intelligence. How do we address as parents choices we make on behalf of our children? Think about those things. It's good to read a book that makes you think. I'll go back to Dan Brown. Dan Brown was great. Okay, I read the book. You probably read the book. It's a nice bit of fluff. It's entertaining. This is something that's going to give you something a little bit different. It's going to cause you to think, and that's a really good thing. I read Klara and the Sun as an exploration of essentially the three theological virtues of faith, hope, and love. And ultimately, that the discussion, particularly around faith, leads to discussion about whether we have a soul. If you clicked on the thumbnail, I asked the question, do we have a soul? Ishiguro asked the same question here. He has his character, Klara, answer the question, but we'll see what you think. So I'll begin with the observation that Klara herself far better exhibits the theological virtues of faith, hope, and love than any of the human characters. Klara is sensitive. Her faith, however, is limited. Klara prays, but she does so only in the aspect of petitioning the sun for some miracle healing of Josie. In the Christian conception of faith, faith includes a loving relationship with God. God loves you, you love God. This is the relationship of love. It is built on faith. Klara's faith is much different. Klara doesn't expect the sun to love her. Klara doesn't love the sun. Klara doesn't expect the sun to love Josie. She simply understands if she undertakes certain self-sacrifice or acts of faith, that hopefully the sun will take notice of Josie and act on her behalf. Klara is highly optimistic. Her optimism is fed by hope, the second theological virtue. Klara's optimism is fed by hope. She has hope that the sun will cure Josie. So let's also consider hope in the context of Josie's friend Rick and her father Paul. In order to make her faith known to the sun, Klara needs the help of both Paul and Rick. Neither Paul nor Rick know exactly what Klara is up to. They don't have an understanding of Klara's mission on her act of faith to cause the sun to notice Josie so the sun will heal Josie. They have no understanding of this, but they're acting on faith. They're acting on hope that whatever it is that Klara is doing, somehow it's going to result in some good to Josie. That's hope. That's the theological virtue that's being expressed by these two. And now we come to the soul. Do you have a soul? We find out in the middle of the book, essentially, that Chrissy bought Klara for the purpose of Klara mimicking the actions, the emotions, the thought processes of Josie, because it will be Klara's artificial intelligence, Klara's mind, that will replace Josie when she dies, if she dies. Klara initially tells Chrissy that she believes that she can open every door in Josie's heart and essentially copy her. Klara, being an artificial intelligence herself, essentially is concluding that there is no soul. What you are as a person is emotion, thought processes, body, and all these things are created by proteins and chemical reactions. So yeah, if she spent enough time with Josie, she could copy Josie. She could continue Josie. Paul, the father himself, ultimately concludes the same, though he hates having come to that conclusion. Chrissy's faith in this idea is imperfect, even though she's the one that purchased Klara just for this purpose. In the absence of faith, Paul suggests she simply default to the science. And speaking of the soul, Paul says to Chrissy, "The trouble is, Chrissy, you're like me. We're both of us sentimental. We can't help it. Our generation still carry the old feelings. Part of us refuses to let go. The part that wants to keep believing there's something unreachable inside of each of us, something that's unique and won't transfer. But there's nothing like that now. You know that. For people our age, it's a hard one to let go. We have to let it go, Chrissy. There's nothing there, nothing inside Josie that's beyond the Klaras of this world to continue. The second Josie won't be a copy. She'll be the exact same, and you'll have every right to love her, just as you love Josie now. It's not faith you need, only rationality." Ultimately, Klara has to conclude that she can't copy the soul, so she comes to an understanding that's different. She comes to an understanding that there is something intangible about each one of us, something that's unique amongst the billions of souls that have ever walked this earth. She states as follows: Mr. Capaldi believed there was nothing special inside Josie that couldn't be continued. He told the mother he'd searched and searched and found nothing like that. But I believe now he was searching in the wrong place. There was something very special, but it wasn't inside Josie. It was inside those who loved her. And if I have one critique of Ishiguro in this book, it's this explanation. Now, I'm not saying that this is Ishiguro's explanation as to whether there's a soul. It's Klara's explanation. It's always important to not confuse the author with the characters. I have no idea whether Ishiguro believes there's a soul. Klara ultimately came to the conclusion that there is, but that soul only exists in those around her who loved her, which frankly is counterintuitive. If the soul didn't exist in Josie, she didn't have a soul. All right, it's illogical. It's an illogical conclusion. So here's the question posed to you by the book. I ask you the question now, and comment below. I would love to hear love to read your thoughts on this subject. Do you have a soul? Is there such thing? Is there something that is inherent in each of us amongst the billions and billions of men and women that have walked this earth that makes us unique? And if there is the soul, does that mean there's a creator? Or to use Ishiguro's device, can you be copied? Do you think it's possible that 100% of you could be copied? My answer is no for two reasons. First, even if we were to limit ourselves to copying thought processes and emotions in another person, we'd be limited. Why? Well, I've been married for 36 years. I know my wife probably better than anyone other than herself. And what I know of my wife is only available to me because she's disclosed it to me. But you know, the heart is a fickle thing. People don't necessarily disclose their whole heart, their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions, their intangible values. There's something that people often hold back. And that's probably the case for you as well. So even my point being, even if it were possible to make a copy of an individual's thought, mind, emotions, it would still be inadequate. There would be that intangible thing missing. There might even be thoughts and emotions that you couldn't copy because they were never disclosed. Secondly, this is my circular argument, so I know there's a little bit of a logical fallacy though, but I think intuitively we all know that there's something unique about us amongst the billions of people. We know that there's a soul because we have one. See, it's the little circle I made. All right, I know it's a logical fallacy, but I think just intuitively, many of us know this, if not all of us. We know there's something more than a chemical interaction that's causing feelings and emotions. We are more than our experiences. We are more than our response to external events. You could put me in a room and you could apply certain experiences to me and you could copy my emotional response and my thought process to every experience, and I guarantee you there'd still be something missing. There's no way you could copy me. The same goes for you. So, to conclude, you've probably heard it said that no two persons read the same book. That's true. We all bring to a book our own experiences, our own thought processes, our own emotions, and that's the beauty of reading, right? Reading allows you, unlike film, reading allows you to paint the picture in, right? The author gives you certain structure and description and thoughts, ideas, and you get to paint the rest of it. It's very interactive in that respect. So my point is that you may take something from this novel entirely different than my own, and that's good, and that's okay, because it needs to be yours. Every once in a while, a novel comes around that causes us to think. And I think this is that novel. And, if I was to rate the story itself, I'd give it a 3. But if I were to rate the whole entirety of the art, meaning the novel, I give it a 4.2. So I strongly recommend that you read this simple story, but when you finish, take the time to answer these questions for yourself. Any of the questions that apply to you. Answer the questions for yourself, take some value from the book, and enjoy it. Thank you for watching this first episode of Bookies. Please like and subscribe. I would love to be able to grow this channel because I love reading books and I love sharing my experience of books with other people, and that's what we get to do here. So hopefully you've taken something of value from this video. Enjoy your day.